welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at a diplomatic web that frankly reads like a Tom Clancy novel.
Yeah, it really does.
But it is playing out right now, literally as we speak, across Washington, Moscow, Tehran, Tel Aviv, and the Gulf. We have got just a massive stack of intel to get through today.
Huge.
Yeah, ranging from leaked Washington Post intelligence assessments to direct Kremlin statements and real-time regional reporting. And our mission today is to cut through all the PR spin and figure out what the actual strategic end game is here.
Right.
Because you're someone who already follows global affairs, so you know the breaking news alerts on your phone. They only give you the absolute surface layer.
Just the tip of the iceberg, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So we are going to dig under that surface and look at how a rapidly escalating military kinetic reality is suddenly crashing headfirst into a global economic crisis.
And that collision, I mean, it is the defining characteristic of modern conflict. We are moving so far away from isolated regional skirmishes.
Those days are gone.
Totally gone. We're looking at a deeply interconnected system where a missile strike in the Middle East instantly rewrites diplomatic agendas in Eastern Europe.
And spikes the cost of shipping globally, like overnight.
Exactly. But before we get into the weeds, I do want to be clear with you, the listener, about our parameters today. Because we are dealing with raw, highly volatile intelligence involving multiple global powers.
The U.S., Russia, Israel, Iran, China, the Arab Gulf states.
All of them. And our analysis here is strictly neutral. We are not analyzing the political morality of these actors.
Nope.
We are looking at the cold, hard mechanics of statecraft. We're treating this board like a geopolitical chess match, analyzing the moves, the bluffs, and the broader implications based purely on the data points we have gathered.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the diplomatic catalyst that really kicked off the specific phase of the crisis.
The phone call.
The phone call. According to the reporting we're pulling from Russian media and Kremlin officials, U.S. President Donald Trump initiated a phone call to Russian President Vladimir Putin right as this powder keg was starting.
And the timing there is critical.
Oh, absolutely. And this was not a quick, 5-minute check-in to issue a standard warning. It was nearly an hour long.
Right.
And they zeroed in on two massive concurrent flashpoints: the escalating confrontation with Iran and the stalled negotiations over the war in Ukraine.
And, the duration of that call is really the first major data point we need to look at.
A whole hour.
Right. In the context of a rapidly degrading security environment, an hour-long direct line between the White House and the Kremlin, that is an eternity.
It really is.
It moves way past the realm of scripted talking points and enters the territory of active, high-stakes negotiation. You do not spend an hour on the phone with an adversary just to reiterate public stances.
No, you'd send an email for that. Or a press release.
Exactly. You're probing for red lines. You are assessing the other leader's risk appetite, and you're trying to find actionable leverage.
But it feels like almost like diplomatic whiplash when you look at how Russia framed the outcome of that call.
Yeah.
Because Yuri Ushakov, the Kremlin aide, he called it constructive.
Constructive. That's a very loaded word in diplomacy.
Very. But look at the dual agenda. Putin reportedly told Washington that in Iran, a political and diplomatic settlement is the only path forward.
Right. He's waving the flag of diplomacy in the Middle East.
Exactly. He's playing the peacemaker. But in the very same breath, the same conversation, he offers a positive assessment of U.S. mediation efforts in Ukraine.
Yeah.
Are they essentially holding the Middle East hostage for a better deal in Kyiv?
That is exactly what's happening. What's fascinating here is the deliberate linkage of two entirely distinct geographical theaters.
Right.
It is a classic move in great power competition. We can call it the geopolitical swap. Russia is acutely aware that the United States does not want to be dragged into a massive multi-front war in the Middle East.
Especially not during an election cycle.
Exactly. Especially not then. So Moscow is projecting the image of a rational actor in the Gulf, the guy saying, hey, let's keep things calm over here.
Or the reasonable ones.
Right. But by simultaneously praising U.S. mediation in Ukraine, Putin is subtly putting a price tag on that calm.
Oh, wow.
He is signaling that Russia's willingness to rein in its allies or avoid escalating the Middle Eastern theater might be directly contingent on Washington pressuring Kyiv to accept terms favorable to Moscow.
So it's basically, I'll help you with your Iran problem if you help me with my Ukraine problem.
Precisely.
It is a staggering level of compartmentalization. I mean, they are fighting a proxy war with the U.S. in Europe and simultaneously trying to leverage a separate proxy conflict in the Middle East.
It's all one big board to them.
But here is where the fog of war rolls in really heavily. Because that 1-hour call paints a picture of open communication, right?
Right.
Yet later in the exact same intelligence stack, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov comes out and explicitly states that Putin has not spoken with Trump since the U.S. and Israel launched their massive strikes against Iran.
Complete pivot.
Yeah, Peskov confirmed there are zero plans for a conversation. Nothing.
And that abrupt shift from an hour-long constructive dialogue to absolute radio silence, that is highly intentional.
It's not just scheduling conflicts.
Oh, definitely not. It is a tactic we can refer to as strategic silence. The initial call likely occurred in that tiny window of time just before the kinetic threshold was crossed.
Before the bombs started falling.
Right, when everyone was still trying to establish the parameters of the incoming violence. But once the U.S. and Israel initiated direct, overwhelming strikes against Iranian soil, the Kremlin's calculus completely shifted.
So they just cut the cord.
By freezing out the White House, Putin is sending a very specific message.
Is he hanging up the phone just to show he doesn't approve? Because, I mean, that seems almost petty for international relations.
It's not about approval, it's about isolation.
Okay, unpack that.
By refusing to speak with Washington while the bombs are falling, Moscow is denying the U.S. the ability to manage the escalation ladder. If you cannot talk to the adversary's primary backer, you cannot effectively gauge their next move. You're flying blind.
That makes sense.
Furthermore, the reports note that while Moscow is ignoring Washington and Tel Aviv, they are actively engaging Gulf capitals.
Which we'll get to later, but yeah, that's wild.
Right. Putin is intentionally elevating Russia's status as the regional mediator while painting the U.S. as a belligerent that cannot control the chaos it helped unleash.
So in a crisis, who you choose to freeze out is often more communicative than what you actually say.
100%. The silence is a weapon.
That makes the silence a weapon in its own right. But we need to pivot from the quiet of those diplomatic channels to the absolute chaos on the ground.
Yes, the kinetic reality.
Because the Middle East has just experienced a seismic shock to its leadership architecture. We're talking about the decapitation of Iran's state apparatus.
And a decapitation strike against a deeply entrenched state. I mean, that fundamentally rewrites the operational rules for everyone involved.
The intelligence confirms a devastating series of strikes that successfully killed Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei.
A massive event.
Huge. And he was killed alongside a significant number of Iranian political figures, top-tier military commanders, and civilians. We are talking about the removal of the ultimate ideological, political, and strategic arbiter of a nation of nearly 90 million people.
Yeah, and we have to understand that the supreme leader in Iran is not merely a figurehead.
Right. He's not just the standard president.
Exactly. He is the linchpin of the entire system. He commands the armed forces, he dictates foreign policy, and he holds the ultimate religious authority.
All power flows through him.
Removing him creates an immediate, terrifying vacuum. The entire command and control structure of the Iranian military, particularly the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, it's all built around loyalty to that specific office.
So it's not like a standard chain of command where the next guy just slots right in seamlessly.
Not without massive friction. When you vaporize the top of that pyramid, you aren't just taking out a general. You are inducing systemic shock.
And the diplomatic scramble to manage that shock, it was instantaneous.
Oh, they move fast.
Putin immediately got on the phone with the Iranian president, Masoud Pezeshkian, to offer condolences.
Right.
But the vacuum at the top was officially filled almost immediately. Mojtaba Khamenei, the late Ayatollah's son, was appointed as the new supreme leader.
The succession was rapid.
Yeah. And Putin was right there again congratulating Mojtaba and publicly expressing confidence that he would continue his father's legacy and unite the Iranian people.
Now notice the specific emphasis there on uniting the Iranian people.
Why is that so important?
Because Moscow's primary fear in this moment is the internal fragmentation of Iran.
They don't want chaos inside the country.
Exactly. A fractured, chaotic Iran fighting a civil war or dealing with massive internal dissent is useless to Russia as a strategic partner.
They need a functional ally, not a collapsed state.
Right, so Putin's rapid public embrace of the successor is an attempt to project an aura of continuity and stability onto a deeply unstable situation.
But Israel is entirely committed to ensuring that stability never materializes.
They are keeping the pressure turned all the way up.
The intelligence highlights a chilling public warning from Israel directed at the new leader. They explicitly warned that they could pursue Mojtaba Khamenei next.
Incredible.
Yeah, the warning signals an intent to keep targeting the highest echelons of Iran's political and military structure indefinitely. It is basically, welcome to the job, try not to sit in that chair too long.
And this raises an important question for you to consider about the sheer psychology of modern statecraft.
How so?
How does a nation function when its head of state is assassinated, the immediate successor is publicly promised the exact same fate, and the country is actively absorbing massive infrastructure strikes?
It has to induce total operational paralysis.
Yeah.
I mean, if you are a mid-level Iranian general right now, how do you even get a clear order if the guy giving it is hiding in a bunker waiting for a bunker buster bomb?
Precisely. It shifts the entire focus of the state from strategic offensive planning to desperate self-preservation.
You can't plan an attack if you're just trying to survive the next 10 minutes.
Right. This strategy of continuous decapitation threats is designed to sever the head from the body of the military apparatus. It creates a state of perpetual emergency.
And paranoia.
Deep paranoia within the ranks. Because if the supreme leader can be found and targeted, anyone can. It forces leaders to communicate less, to move constantly, and to restrict their inner circles.
Which isolates them even more.
Exactly. All of which heavily degrades their ability to coordinate a complex, sustained counterattack.
And in the middle of this intense psychological and kinetic warfare, Putin goes on camera to reaffirm Moscow's firm and unwavering support for Iran during this period of severe challenges.
The optics game.
Yeah, it is fascinating to watch this public embrace harden exactly as the violence hits its peak.
Well, the public declarations of solidarity are the theater of geopolitics. They are designed for domestic consumption in both Russia and Iran, and to draw a rhetorical line in the sand for the West.
But it's just words, right?
Exactly. The actual strength of an alliance in the 21st century isn't measured in televised condolences. It is measured in the covert exchange of actionable data.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting.
Yes, the shadow war.
Because the intelligence we have completely pulls back the curtain on what Putin's unwavering support actually looks like in the dark. We are moving from the public PR campaign into a massive shadow war.
Let's get into the WAPO report.
According to an explosive Washington Post report based on U.S. intelligence officials, Moscow is providing Tehran with highly sensitive targeting data.
This is the big one.
We're talking about the real-time or near-real-time locations of American warships, military aircraft, and radar systems operating across the Middle East.
We need to pause and truly dissect the gravity of this development. Passing this specific caliber of intelligence is not a supportive gesture. It's an act of proxy belligerence.
It's an act of war, essentially, just outsourced.
Exactly. It is the crossing of a massive geopolitical Rubicon that fundamentally alters the lethality of the Iranian military.
Let's break down the actual tactical impact of this. Why is giving Iran the coordinates of a U.S. radar installation such a catastrophic shift? We're just talking about basic ship positions, right? Iranian commanders now effectively have the blind spots of the Patriot batteries guarding our bases.
That is exactly the reality. Think about how the U.S. military projects power globally. It relies heavily on advanced sensor networks and an integrated radar umbrella.
Shield.
The shield, exactly. These systems are designed to detect incoming threats hundreds of miles away, giving interceptors time to launch.
Right.
If Russia provides Iran with the precise geolocation of these radar systems, they are effectively handing over the blueprints to the U.S. defense shield. Iran does not have to guess where the coverage gaps are.
They can just fly right through them.
They can program their cruise missiles or low-flying attack drones to navigate the specific corridors that are least observed by American sensors.
That is terrifying.
Or, alternatively, they can use that data to launch a preemptive strike designed solely to blind the U.S. bases by taking out the radar arrays first.
Leaving the door wide open.
Exactly, clearing the way for a much larger, more devastating wave of munitions.
And it extends to mobile assets, too. The report mentions warships and military aircraft. If an aircraft carrier strike group loses its opacity.
Its ability to hide.
Right. If its location is constantly being pinged to Tehran by Russian satellites, it transitions from being an untouchable fortress to a very large, very vulnerable target in a confined space like the Persian Gulf or the Arabian Sea.
Yes, and the geography is key here. The Persian Gulf is a highly constrained littoral environment.
It's basically a lake for a carrier.
Exactly. A U.S. carrier operates best in blue water, out in the open ocean, with hundreds of miles of buffer zone. In the Gulf, reaction times are already compressed to minutes or even seconds.
You barely have time to blink.
Right. If Iran possesses Russian satellite telemetry tracking U.S. ships, it nullifies the American advantage of stealth and maneuverability. It allows Iran to pre-position its anti-ship ballistic missiles or swarm boats for maximum impact.
So this data actively, materially enables Iran to kill American personnel and destroy multi-billion-dollar strategic assets.
It is lethal aid in its purest form.
The intelligence officials quoted in the Washington Post note that this is the first indication that another major U.S. adversary may be indirectly involved in the expanding conflict.
They're pointing straight at Moscow.
Yeah, they're calling it a deeper geopolitical dimension.
Yeah.
It feels like we're looking at a localized World War proxy fight.
It is the formalization of the proxy intelligence war. Russia is utilizing Iranian forces as the kinetic instrument to strike at American power.
So Iran pulls the trigger, but Russia points the gun.
Exactly. Moscow gets to drain U.S. resources, test the limits of American missile defense systems in real-world conditions, and potentially inflict American casualties.
All without a single Russian soldier firing a shot or crossing a border.
It is a ruthless, highly calculated strategy designed to overextend Washington while maintaining a thin veil of plausible deniability.
But what is incredibly revealing is who is not playing this game.
The contrast here is fascinating.
It really is. The Washington Post report includes a crucial caveat from two officials familiar with the intelligence. They state that China does not appear to be providing any similar assistance.
Nothing at all.
Right. Beijing maintains massive economic and diplomatic ties with Tehran, but there is zero indication they're handing over targeting data.
And we have to ask why.
Exactly. Why the split? They are both major U.S. adversaries. They both want to see American influence wane. Why is Russia handing out the cheat codes to the U.S. military while China keeps its hands entirely clean?
This divergence is arguably one of the most important strategic insights in this entire briefing. It highlights the vastly different grand strategies of Moscow and Beijing.
Okay, let's explore that.
We can look at this through the lens of their respective global postures. Russia is currently operating under what we might call the chaos broker doctrine.
Chaos broker.
Yeah, they are heavily sanctioned, economically decoupled from the West, and bogged down in a massive war of attrition in Ukraine, where the U.S. is actively arming their enemy.
So they are already outside the club.
Exactly. From Putin's perspective, he has very little left to lose by setting fires in the American geopolitical backyard. In fact, a Middle East engulfed in flames distracts the Pentagon and diverts munitions away from Kiev.
So Russia thrives on the disruption because they are already locked out of the system. But China is the factory floor for the system.
Precisely. China is the ultimate stability merchant.
Stability merchant, I like that.
Their entire grand strategy, the Belt and Road Initiative, their massive export economy relies on secure global trade routes and economic predictability.
They need people to keep buying their stuff.
And they need to get the energy to make the stuff. Furthermore, China is the primary buyer of sanctioned Iranian oil. If a massive direct kinetic war breaks out between the U.S. and Iran, the Strait of Hormuz closes, and China's energy supply is severely threatened.
So they would be shooting themselves in the foot.
Exactly. Beijing wants to gradually erode U.S. hegemony, yes, but they want to do it through economic coercion and slow diplomatic alignment, not by triggering a hot war that could spark a global depression.
They want a slow transition, not a fire.
Right. Handing Iran targeting data to kill American sailors is an incredibly high-risk escalatory move that Beijing simply has no appetite for.
And the tragic reality of Russia's risk appetite is playing out in the casualty reports. The intelligence confirms that this proxy war has already turned deadly for American forces.
Yes, the human cost.
Just this past Sunday, an Iranian drone strike penetrated a military site in Kuwait. 6 U.S. service members were killed, and several others were injured. This is the exact manifestation of that intelligence sharing we just discussed.
And the deaths of 6 American personnel in a single strike, that represents a profound escalation.
It's not just a warning shot anymore.
Not at all. It crosses a red line that moves the situation from a regional containment effort into a scenario where direct, overwhelming American retaliation becomes almost politically and strategically mandatory.
And the scale of the kinetic exchange happening right now is difficult to wrap your head around. The intelligence details the sheer volume of Iran's response.
The numbers are staggering.
Since this phase of the war began, Iran has launched thousands of one-way attack drones and hundreds of ballistic and cruise missiles at U.S. military positions, embassies, and allied targets across the region.
Thousands.
Thousands of drones.
Let those numbers sink in because they reveal the terrifying maturity of Iran's domestic arms industry. We are not talking about a ragtag militia firing unguided rockets.
No, this is industrialized.
Exactly. Launching thousands of drones and hundreds of missiles requires an industrial-scale manufacturing base, highly sophisticated logistics, and deeply entrenched, hardened storage facilities.
You can't just build these in a garage.
No. It proves that despite years of sanctions, Iran has successfully built a robust, localized supply chain for asymmetric warfare.
But the U.S. and Israel are actively trying to dismantle that supply chain in real time.
And they're hitting back hard.
The reports indicate a joint U.S.-Israeli campaign that has struck an astonishing 2,000 targets inside Iran.
2,000 targets.
Yes, 2,000. And the intelligence categorizes these targets into three specific buckets: ballistic missile facilities, naval assets, and sites linked to Iran's leadership structure.
And that targeting matrix, it is a masterclass in systemic degradation. Hitting 2,000 targets is not about sending a message.
It's not a warning.
No, it is about physically breaking the machinery of the state.
Let's play devil's advocate for a second. If Iran has thousands of these drones already dispersed in underground bunkers across the mountains, does hitting a manufacturing facility actually stop an attack tomorrow? Or is this purely a long-term play to prevent them from restocking next year?
It is a combination of both, but you are highlighting a crucial dilemma. Hitting a missile assembly plant does not stop the missile that was rolled into a subterranean launch tube yesterday.
Right. That missile is already armed and ready.
However, the 2,000 targets aren't just empty factories. By targeting ballistic missile facilities, they are hunting the solid fuel mixing plants, the precision guidance manufacturing nodes, and the mobile erector launchers.
The things they need to actually fire them.
Yes. They are trying to turn off the faucet, yes, but they are also trying to blind the immediate launch capabilities.
And the second category is naval assets. This feels directly tied to the geography of the Gulf we were talking about earlier.
Absolutely. Iran's conventional navy is relatively outdated, but their asymmetric naval capability, the fleet of fast attack craft, midget submarines, and anti-ship missile batteries operated by the Revolutionary Guard that is designed specifically to swarm larger vessels and mine the critical waterways.
So they're trying to clear the water.
By degrading these naval assets, the U.S. and Israel are trying to peel back Iran's anti-access and area denial capabilities. They are trying to force open the maritime corridors so that U.S. carriers can operate closer to the coast and commercial shipping can survive.
Which brings us back to the third category, the leadership structure. They are hunting the commanders while destroying the weapons.
It is the strategy of cascading failure.
Explain that.
If you destroy the communication node that connects the surviving general to the surviving missile silo, the missile doesn't launch.
Even if both the general and the missile survive the strike.
Exactly. By hitting 2,000 targets across leadership, naval, and missile domains simultaneously, you overwhelm the adversary's ability to assess damage, route orders, and mount a cohesive defense.
You just overload their entire system.
It introduces absolute friction into the Iranian war machine.
But the Iranian war machine is still finding ways to strike back, and they are pivoting to the one vulnerability that hurts the entire planet.
Yeah.
Energy.
The ultimate pressure point.
The intelligence shows a massive shift in the conflict's center of gravity. Iranian retaliatory strikes are no longer just aiming at military bases. They are hitting energy facilities in Gulf countries and targeting commercial oil tankers navigating the Strait of Hormuz.
Targeting energy infrastructure is the ultimate asymmetric weapon. Iran understands that it cannot win a conventional war of attrition against the combined might of the U.S. and Israel.
They just don't have the firepower.
But they possess the geographic leverage to hold the global economy hostage.
And the markets are panicking. The reporting notes that because the Strait of Hormuz is one of the world's most critical oil choke points, oil prices have spiked for a third consecutive day.
Which was inevitable.
The intelligence briefing makes a profound observation here. Energy security has moved to the center of the crisis. The economic ripple effect now matches the military escalation.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you are seeing the weaponization of global trade.
Yeah.
Roughly 20% of the world's total oil consumption passes through the Strait of Hormuz daily.
20%. That's massive.
It is a narrow, highly vulnerable waterway. By firing anti-ship missiles at tankers and launching drones at Gulf refineries, Iran is sending a brutal message to the international community.
Which is what?
If our economy is destroyed and our state is dismantled, we will drag the rest of the world down with us.
Mutual assured economic destruction.
Right. They are trying to inflict so much financial pain on neutral countries and allies alike that those nations pressure Washington and Tel Aviv to halt the military campaign.
And the Gulf Arab states, who are literally sitting on top of this powder keg, they're hitting their absolute limit.
Understandably so.
The intelligence details the fury coming out of the United Arab Emirates. UAE President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan got on the phone and made it explicitly clear that these Iranian strikes are blatant attacks targeting Emirati territory.
He is drawing a hard line.
Yeah, and four Arab Gulf leaders issued a joint message demanding a halt to the escalation before it consumes the entire region. They are basically screaming for someone to turn down the temperature.
The Gulf states are in an incredibly precarious geopolitical vice right now.
They're stuck right in the middle.
Their entire economic model, their massive sovereign wealth funds, their glittering futuristic cities, it is all entirely dependent on the uninterrupted extraction and export of hydrocarbons.
If the oil stops flowing, everything stops.
Everything. They host major American military bases, making them implicit targets in an anti-U.S. proxy war, yet they share a small body of water with Iran. A full-scale regional war doesn't just threaten their military, it threatens to turn their critical infrastructure into collateral damage.
They're desperate for an off-ramp.
Desperate.
So what does this all mean? Because this brings us to a diplomatic paradox that is almost too absurd for fiction.
Here we go.
We just spent 20 minutes dissecting how Russia is secretly providing Iran with the radar blind spots to kill Americans and escalate this war. But now, in the face of this massive Gulf energy crisis, who is stepping up to play the peacemaker? Vladimir Putin.
The audacity of the strategic maneuvering here is truly staggering.
It really is. Putin is basically handing you around the matches, pointing out exactly where the U.S. keeps its gasoline, and then calling the UAE to say, terrible fire hazard in the neighborhood these days. Want me to talk to the guy with the matches?
That is an incredibly apt metaphor.
The Kremlin announced that Putin held multiple calls with 4 Arab Gulf leaders over a 24-hour period.
He's working the phones.
Yeah, Dmitry Peskov says Putin is going to use Moscow's strategic partnership with Tehran to convey the deep concerns of these Arab leaders. He is supposedly pressing for at least a slight easing of tensions regarding the oil infrastructure to contain escalation spreading across the Gulf.
A slight easing of tensions.
How does one nation-state play the arsonist and the firefighter at the exact same time without the rest of the world calling their bluff?
Because the rest of the world, particularly the Gulf states, cannot afford to call the bluff.
They don't have a choice.
Exactly. Let us analyze Putin's calculus here. Why does he care if Gulf oil is disrupted? As an oil exporter heavily sanctioned by the West, wouldn't a massive spike in oil prices be a windfall for the Russian war chest?
That's exactly what I was thinking. I mean, if oil goes to $150 a barrel, Russia makes a fortune on whatever they can smuggle out to China and India, right?
In the short term, yes. A moderate spike is highly beneficial to Moscow. But a total closure of the Strait of Hormuz and the systematic destruction of Saudi and Emirati refineries, that would trigger a catastrophic global recession.
A full-blown depression.
Right. And in a global depression, energy demand craters entirely. That long-term demand destruction would devastate Russia's economy.
So they'd make a quick buck and then go bankrupt.
Exactly. Furthermore, Putin has spent the last decade carefully cultivating relationships with Riyadh and Abu Dhabi through the OPEC Plus cartel.
Right, they coordinate production.
He needs their cooperation to manage global oil quotas and evade Western sanctions. He cannot afford to alienate these crucial Arab partners by letting his Iranian proxy burn down their lifeblood.
So he is tightly managing the leash. He wants Iran to hurt the United States, but he absolutely demands that Iran stop short of hurting his own economic partners in the Gulf.
Precisely. And by stepping into this mediator role, Putin is demonstrating a profound geopolitical reality.
Which is?
Washington may have the aircraft carriers in the region, but Moscow has the diplomatic access to the adversary. The U.S. cannot call Tehran to stop the strikes on tankers. They don't have the relationship.
Putin does.
Putin does. By being the only leader who can theoretically convince Iran to spare the oil fields, Putin makes himself indispensable to the Arab Gulf leaders.
And by extension to the global economy.
Right. It is a brilliant, cynical masterclass in exploiting the fragmented, multipolar nature of this new era of conflict.
It is truly breathtaking to step back and look at the entire board we have covered today. I mean, we started this deep dive looking at a single hour-long phone call between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin.
Just one data point.
And from that single data point, we have mapped a cascade of events that touches every corner of the globe. We examined the decapitation of Iran's leadership structure with the death of the Ayatollah and the immediate psychological warfare waged against his son.
The systemic shock.
Yeah. We dug deep into the Washington Post bombshell, revealing a shadow proxy war where Russia is handing out the cheat codes to U.S. radar systems, a move that fundamentally alters the balance of power and has already cost 6 American lives in Kuwait.
The human cost of proxy warfare.
Exactly. We looked at the sheer, terrifying kinetic scale of thousands of drones meeting 2,000 retaliatory strikes. And finally, we watched this military crisis morph into a global energy hostage situation in the Strait of Hormuz, with Russia impossibly playing the role of both the instigator's chief ally and the region's only viable mediator.
It's dizzying.
It is a level of complexity that demands constant vigilance.
It demands an entirely new framework for understanding global risk. And as we wrap up this analysis, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought to mull over.
Go for it.
We have clearly established today that military escalation and massive economic disruption are no longer separate domains. They are perfectly intertwined.
Right.
The Strait of Hormuz is the world's most vulnerable economic jugular. If this proxy war continues to escalate and the covert intelligence sharing emboldens actors to fully sever that energy artery, at what point does a regional crisis force the hand of the global powers who have desperately remained on the sidelines?
What are you thinking of?
If the oil stops flowing, do nations like India or major European powers who rely absolutely on that energy for their survival suddenly find themselves forced to intervene militarily simply to prevent their own economies from collapsing?
Wow.
In an interconnected world, there are no true bystanders.
That is an incredibly sobering thought, and exactly the kind of question that separates surface-level news from true strategic understanding. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredibly complex journey today. Your curiosity and your willingness to dig into the hard facts are exactly why we do this. We promise to keep cutting through the noise, tracking the intelligence, and diving deep into the realities of our world right alongside you. Until next time.